Welcome to Cattle Connect, your insight into Alabama's beef cattle industry. I'm your host, Kayla Greer, and this is Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Howdy, and welcome to the 38th episode of the Cattle Connect podcast. I hope by the time you're listening to this, maybe a few of you have had a touch of rain in your area to help settle the dust. I hope maybe even after a historically warm November, the temperatures are maybe falling just a tick. I know we're all tired of sweating and ready for some cooler weather. But speaking of forecast, one thing the weather affects, no matter if it's hot, cold, rainy, or dry, are the management decisions that we make day to day on our operations, particularly when it comes to conservation efforts. So I'm in studio today with a gal who knows a thing or two about implementing practices on farm to support your sustainability efforts, and she may even be able to offer some rebates to help you achieve your goals. Her name is Ashley Henderson, and she is the Assistant Executive Director and the Director of Conservation Programs with the Alabama Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Ashley, welcome.
Good afternoon, Kayla. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is the first podcast that I've ever done,
Good.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, well, welcome to the Cattle Connect. Before we dive into what we're going to talk about today, Ashley, I would love to hear a little bit about your story so our listeners can get to know you. So tell us about yourself and your career, maybe.
Okay, that's great. So I am a civil engineer, and I have worked for the Soil and Water Conservation Committee for about 6 years, but I have a career of over 30 years in the water arena, mostly as a project engineer and a project manager. So I've been with Soil and Water for 6 years. They brought me on board to implement some conservation programs here in the state, and I have really enjoyed working with Soil and Water and all the wonderful people that I get to meet.
Well, you certainly do a good job at it, and no doubt about it, you are a great resource for farmers across the state. And just for a point of clarity, can you explain the operating structure of the Alabama Soil and Water Committee so that everyone can kind of follow us in today's conversation?
Absolutely. So Alabama Soil and Water Conservation Committee is a state agency, and we are charged with 4 areas of conservation on private lands. That is water, erosion, wildlife, and forestry.
Okay.
So we work with our federal partner, NRCS, to make sure that conservation programs are implemented in Alabama. And we also work with the local Soil and Water Conservation District to address local needs.
Okay. All right. So you guys are always busy. Y'all are taking things on a local level, bringing it up to the state, saying, hey, here's issues that we need to help people out on the countryside with. And y'all go forth and conquer from there. Is that right? That's
correct. And Soil and Water is really a grassroots effort.
Right.
So even though we're a state agency, we are very focused on local resource concerns and local decision-making processes. So we work with a state entity that is in each county, which is called your Soil and Water Conservation District.
Got it. Okay, well, that makes sense. Thank you for getting us up to speed before we get more into the conversation. Okay, why we're here today. You've hinted at cattle programs already, but I think today we want to dig into the SIP program, which is the Conservation Incentive Program. And so, Ashley, I'm going to give you the floor and ask you to just dive into that a little bit more. Tell us about that program as a whole, and then specifically how it can apply to cattle producers.
Okay, that's great. So the SIP program is funded by the state legislature, and it is to encourage the adoption of conservation practices which benefit first the producer or the landowner on the property that the conservation practice is implemented, but it also benefits all the citizens of Alabama by protecting our natural resources. Mm-hmm. About 95% of Alabama is privately owned, so we all benefit from the clean water, healthy soil, flourishing forests, and abundant wildlife that these private lands provide. And the SIP is a competitive program that provides a rebate to approved landowners who implement conservation practices that protect these resources.
Okay, so emphasis on rebate. So it's after the project is done and paid for, then folks can get money back on the project. Is that right?
That's correct. So there's a process of applying for the practice, then completing the practice, and then at the end, you bring your receipts to the conservation district, and they will give you a rebate on what you've spent. So you do have money out of pocket, and then you get up to 75% of the cost back for approved
so 75%.
practices.
That was going to be my next question was, was it the whole amount or so up to 75%?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So what are some of the practices within the program?
So some of our practices, we have about 35 practices, and some of our practices are very similar to NRCS's EQIP program, like prescribed burns, cover crops, and other items like that. But what we really like to focus on are the ones that are Alabama specific and that are for us addressing local needs and maybe gaps where NRCS is unable to provide assistance.
Okay.
So those things would be some of our herd health practices that I'd love to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, please do. Dig in.
So we have several practices that we think would be really of interest to the people listening to this podcast. They include a corral system, a feed trough with a heavy use pad, and also a squeeze chute. So those are three practices that you really don't find assistance anywhere else.
Yeah.
But you can work with your local soil and water district, and you can implement these practices in accordance with the program's requirements, and then you can receive that up to 75% cost back at the end of the project.
Okay, so you said corrals, feed bunks with a heavy use pad.
That's correct.
And squeeze chutes. Those are the three kind of you can't find them anywhere else.
That's right. Those are the three you can't find anywhere else. And in fact, the squeeze chute is new this year.
Okay.
The first time it's gone into practices this year. So it's a standalone practice, or you can combine these practices.
Oh, okay.
So this program, there's not a ton of money. So it may be hard to get multiple practices, but you could go ahead and apply for multiple practices and then work with the local soil and water district, because they are actually the people who get to select which practices are funded. And they also could put a cap on the amount of funding that's received. So because the funds are limited, we let that local decision-making play out in each one of the different districts across the state.
I think that's so important, because the local districts are going to know the issues or the needs more in an area versus a state agency making a call. So I think that's really important. One specific practice might be more needed in a specific area over another. So I love that. And I didn't realize that the squeeze chutes were new this year. So that is a perk out there, cattlemen. If you are in need of a squeeze chute, it might be worth a trip to your soil and water district. Ashley, since the onset of SIP, what practices, you said there are 35 within it. What practices would you say you've seen the most success with?
So I guess traditionally we've probably seen more people applying for forestry practices like prescribed burn and the practices associated with that. And then additionally we see quite a few people that apply for cover crops. But for the last 2 years we've had these herd health practices, and they have been extremely popular. And I believe it's because we really are filling a gap that you can't really address any other way. And then another practice that we have just started about 2 years ago is lime amendments for your field. So we will actually help pay for the cost of soil test and then adding lime, which I know some of your producers might be interested in that practice as well. So that just requires for you to have a general idea of what kind of lime rate that you need, and to be able to provide a cost estimate to the district so that they can obligate the appropriate number for your practice. And then, of course, once again, you're paid on receipts at the end of the project. Right.
That's so interesting. I love that you guys are kind of looking and saying, what isn't already taken care of out there. And we kind of did that too when we were looking at this last legislative session with the tax exemption on fencing materials. We said, hey, there's a tax exemption on feed, seed, fertilizer, all these things. What's missing? And so I understand that mindset there of saying what's missing, what can we do? And I think that this is something particularly, Ashley, that is really good for new and beginning farmers.
Yes, absolutely. And we feel like if we get a new and beginning farmer coming in there, we're going to be successful in our mission, which is conservation of those natural resources. We're going to help that farmer have a healthier herd, which in turn lends itself to healthier pastures, healthier soil, and healthier waters. But we're also going to help them be successful and help them stay in the game on their land. So we feel like that is a important mission that we have, as well as the conservation mission.
Yeah, and it's like you said, you kind of get them started off on the right foot, right? Instead of bumming off old materials, which there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can offer this rebate and allow them to get new, high quality equipment, gets them started off on the right foot, and maybe teaches them how to implement the practice the correct way on their operation. And that's a really great program. So if you are a first generation or a new beginning farmer, this is really something that you might want to look into, everyone. But if I'm looking into it and maybe the website is overwhelming me or whatever, theoretically speaking, Ashley, if I'm a cattle producer that's interested in looking into one of these programs, whether it's the feed trough or the corral system or the squeeze chute, whatever, and I'd like to qualify for one of these SIP rebates, where do I start? What do I do?
So we're actually at the perfect time, because the Soil and Water Conservation District started taking applications October 1st.
Okay.
So the first thing to do is to contact your local Soil and Water Conservation District. Most people know where they're located because they're typically co-located with NRCS.
Okay, so your local NRCS office.
Your local
usually.
NRCS office. And if you have any concerns about finding them, you can go to our website, which is AlabamaSoilAndWater.gov, and you can go to Find Your District, and it'll give you a phone number, an email address, and the physical location of the district office.
Okay, and we'll be sure to put that link in the show description.
Okay, that's great. And they can just contact them and make an application. And for most of these practices, we ask that the producer provide an estimate, because the producer really has a better idea of exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And then with that application and that cost estimate, once the district collects all the applications that they have for the year, which can be November or December time frame, then the district will be able to look at how much money they have and how many applicants they have and how many they'll be able to fund, and make a decision based on that. Now, your cost estimate is going to be like the upper level of how much the project is eligible for, but we still pay on those receipt dollars.
Right. Okay, so that's we've talked about the SIP program as a whole and all that it offers, and you guys like to focus on those 3 herd health practices because they kind of fill in a gap. But do you have any other cattle producer facing programs? Like you just mentioned the Lyme, that was a great example. Or information that you'd like to share with our Cattle Connect audience today? You know, because we have some diversified guys out there. They might be foresters or poultry farmers or something else in addition to being cattle producers, and so you've got a captive audience.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Well, thank you for giving me that time. I'll actually take it. So we have several projects that we have been working on with NRCS. One of those is an irrigation initiative. So we're helping people put new irrigation on the landscape, and we are doing that in watersheds. So the Middle Tennessee River watershed, the Choctawhatchee P Rivers watershed, and we hope that by early next year we'll be able to take applications in the Middle Alabama River watershed.
Okay.
And that is to help people to install like center pivot or micro irrigation and wells, pipes, and pumps. So that has been really successful. And in a year like this, it's been so dry, it has been really helpful.
I think we all wish we had some irrigation this year.
That's right. We were also just recently awarded a Black Belt Prairie Restoration Grant. So we'll be working all along the Black Belt to restore the prairie in that area. And of course, that really focuses on that wildlife resource that we were talking about earlier, because we know as we improve the prairie, we also improve the habitat for our wildlife here in Alabama. And then finally, I guess maybe our most popular program is the wild hog program.
Oh, the feral hogs.
Yes, that's right. We have several practices that address the damage that feral hogs do to our landscape all across Alabama. And those include 3 trapping practices, which is a trap that you build yourself, a smart trap that you can purchase, or a net trap that you can purchase.
Okay.
In addition to that, last year we implemented trapping assistance. So this is where you can pay somebody to come to your farm to help you trap hogs, and we will help reimburse you for the cost of having that person come to your farm and trap hogs.
Oh, that's so good, because those sounders, they're so smart, and understanding how they operate and how they move and their patterns, that's not something that just any old person who's got hogs on their land can go, oh, I think I know how to trap these. Because I've always heard, and correct me if I'm wrong from what you know, if you trap and only get a few, then you're doing more harm than good.
That is correct. You really need to take the entire sounder out when you trap hogs. And on top of just having the knowledge of trapping, most of our producers in Alabama are super busy because they have a full-time job. They're also dealing with their cattle after hours. And then if you add a third job on top of that, trapping hogs, it's really challenging. So we felt like this would be a great way to assist producers. So we started that last year. There are some requirements so that we know that you have a trapper that knows what they're doing.
Right.
But that's easily explained in our CIP manual. And then we also have a small exclusion fencing grant that we received from the National Association of Conservation Districts, and this is to exclude feral hogs from high-dollar crops like produce, vegetables, orchards, and things like that. And that's the lower 33 counties in Alabama.
So we're talking like a fence-out program for feral hogs.
That is correct. That is correct.
All right, that sound means it's time for this week's Cattle Connect Fast Facts, and here they are. First, our 2024 Christmas from Cowboys membership drive is now live. Give someone the gift of membership this holiday season. It's truly the gift that keeps on giving all throughout the year, especially each month when they get that Cattleman magazine out of their mailbox. Learn more about how to gift a membership at bamabeef.org/Christmas or give our office a call. Number 2. Since we're still at the beginning of November, we want to make sure that you guys are up to speed with all the association news. In addition to your magazine, which we just talked about, which should have already hit your mailbox by now, we would encourage you to deep dive into all the October news, which there is a lot because of October Beef Month in Alabama. We'd encourage you to dig into that news at blog.bamabeef.org or check your inbox, because we send that out through an e-newsletter each month. But there you'll find the October Bama Beef News Roundup, and we hope that you'll read it and stay in the know. Again, that's blog.bamabeef.org. And last but not least, get ready. Registration, hotels, trade show exhibits, all the things for the 2025 ACA Convention and Trade Show open this coming up Monday, November 12th. Hop on over to bamabeef.org/events to find out all the information that you need to know about registrations for hotels, pricing, registration for convention, pricing, hotel rooms, getting a trade show booth, whatever it might be. Monday, November 12th, this coming up Monday is the day. We will be in Birmingham, February 21st and 22nd, and we hope to see you there. Well, that's all I've got. Ashley, thank you so much for hopping in studio with me this week so our folks can learn more about their opportunities through the Conservation Incentive Program. Remind me one more time where they can go to learn more if they wanted to learn about this program.
Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate you having me. So if you want to learn more about this program, go to your local Soil and Water Conservation District. They are typically co-located with the NRCS at the NRCS office. If you need help finding your local district, go to our website, AlabamaSoilAndWater.gov, and use the Find Your District link, and you can find all the information there.
Well, there you have it. We'll see you all back here next week for more Cattle Connect podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cattle Connect, brought to you by the Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Be sure to subscribe to get notified when our next episode goes live. And until next time, remember, beef, it's what's for dinner.